You were 7 years old when you learned to read a room before you spoke. You were forced into a psychological role that shouldn't exist. And it left you with traits most people will never understand. Traits psychology is only now beginning to explain. Not all of them good, but all of them profound. If this already feels familiar, you're about to understand why. If you were the child who became the adult before you were ready, this is what that experience carved into your psychology. And if this already feels familiar, subscribe and drop a comment. You're not alone in this. Now back to the video. Psychology has a name for what happened to you: parentification. It's when a child becomes the emotional caregiver for adults who should have been caring for them. When this happens during critical developmental years, it doesn't just hurt. It fundamentally rewires how your brain processes safety, love, and your own worth. But here's what most people miss. That rewiring created traits in you that are genuinely rare. Let's talk about what you became. First, you developed what psychologists call hypervigilant empathy. You can read people with terrifying accuracy. You walk into a room and within seconds, you know who's upset, who's lying, who needs managing. It's not a superpower you asked for. It's a survival skill you had no choice but to master. Most people rely on words. You learn to read micro-expressions, tone shifts, the space between sentences. You became fluent in unspoken pain because your safety depended on predicting adult emotions before they exploded. But it also means you're exhausted because you can't turn it off. You're scanning threats that aren't there anymore. You're managing emotions that aren't your responsibility. Your nervous system never learned the difference between empathy and survival. But hypervigilance isn't the only thing trauma gave you. Second trait, you're hyperindependent, but not in the way people think. You don't ask for help because somewhere deep in your psychology, you learned that needing someone is dangerous. That vulnerability equals abandonment. When you were the child holding your family together, asking for support wasn't an option. So you built walls so high that even you can't see over them anymore. You became the person everyone leans on, but you lean on no one. And here's the tragedy. You're not actually independent. You're isolated. True independence means you can choose to rely on others. You don't have that choice because your childhood taught you that adults aren't safe, that support is conditional, that you're on your own, and the world celebrates it. Look how strong you are. Look how you never need anything. But strength without softness isn't strength. It's armor that's fused to your skin. And that armor began forming earlier than anyone realized. Third, you carry what psychologists call borrowed maturity. You were told you were wise beyond your years. So mature, so responsible. But that maturity wasn't earned through natural development. It was stolen from the childhood you should have had. You learned to speak like an adult, think like an adult, comfort like an adult. And now, as an adult, there's this strange disconnect. You can handle massive responsibilities, complex emotional situations, professional pressure. Playfulness feels performative. Rest feels wrong. Psychologists recognize this as developmental foreclosure. You skipped stages you needed, and you can't go back. But you can grieve what was taken. Fourth trait. Your boundaries are wrapped in guilt. Even now, saying no feels like betrayal. Taking space feels selfish. Prioritizing yourself feels like abandonment. Because when you were a child, your boundaries were consistently violated. Your needs were inconvenient. Your feelings were too much. So you learned to shrink, to accommodate, to make yourself small enough that maybe, just maybe, you'd be worth keeping. This creates what psychology calls boundary confusion. You can't tell where you end and other people begin. You absorb their moods, their problems, their responsibilities. And then you resent them for it, even though you never said no. But here's what you need to understand. They're not rejection. They're the sacred space where you finally get to exist without performing, without fixing, without disappearing. Learning to hold them without guilt is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. But it's how you stop living in survival mode. But the rarest trait of all is the one almost no one talks about. You understand human psychology on a level that can't be taught because you lived it. You know what it looks like when someone is pretending to be fine. You know the sound of a cry for help no one else hears. You became a translator of human suffering because you had to translate your own just to survive. This makes you powerful. Deeply, quietly powerful. But it also means you feel everything. You carry other people's pain like it's yours. You see the child in every broken adult. And sometimes you forget to witness yourself. Here's your permission. You don't have to save everyone. You don't have to understand everyone. You don't have to be the emotional archaeologist for every person who crosses your path. You can choose to witness yourself first, to hold your own hand, to finally show up for the child you were. If you carry these traits, know this: you're not broken. You're not too much. You're someone who survived what shouldn't have been survivable. And those traits that feel like curses, they are also proof that you're still here, still fighting. The child you were deserved better. The adult you are deserves rest. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means finally letting that child come home. For more psychology content on trauma, healing, and the hidden patterns that shape you, check out the newsletter in the description. Real insight, no fluff, just truth. You grew up too fast, but you're still growing. And this time, you get to do it safely.